My name is Ethan Wilson, and at 32, I never imagined I'd become my sister's legal guardian. Melissa and I have always had a complicated relationship, competitive yet caring in our own dysfunctional way. But nothing prepared me for the moment she came at me with a hot curling iron at her birthday party, trying to brand my face in a fit of rage. The greatest irony? I'm now her court-appointed caretaker, responsible for the very person who tried to permanently scar me. Before I dive into this wild story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to care for someone who once hurt you deeply. Growing up with Melissa was like riding a constant emotional roller coaster. We were born just 3 years apart, and for the first few years of our lives, we were inseparable. I still have faded photographs of us building sandcastles at Virginia Beach, her toddler hands patting down the walls I'd carefully constructed. Those early days were simple, uncomplicated by the competition that would later define our relationship. Everything changed when we entered our teen years. Our parents, George and Helen Wilson, were both high achievers. Dad was a corporate attorney, Mom a hospital administrator. They expected nothing less than excellence from their children, and they weren't subtle about comparing our achievements. Melissa got an A+ on her science project. "What happened with yours, Ethan?" Dad would ask when I brought home an A-. Or, "Ethan made the varsity basketball team as a sophomore. Melissa, maybe you should train harder for volleyball tryouts next year." They didn't realize they were planting seeds of resentment that would grow into thorny vines between us. I excelled in math and sciences, approaching problems with logical precision. Melissa was the creative one, able to paint, write, and perform in ways that seemed magical to my methodical mind. But in our household, my consistent A's in calculus often outshone her incredible artwork that won regional competitions. "Numbers are measurable," Dad would say. "Art is subjective." I'd see the hurt in Melissa's eyes, but rather than defending her, I'd silently bask in the rare parental approval. When I was 16 and Melissa 13, I found her crying in our backyard tree house, clutching a torn painting. "What happened?" I asked, climbing up to sit beside her. "I'll never be good enough," she sobbed. "Not like you." That was the first time I realized how our parents' comparisons were affecting her. I tried to comfort her, awkwardly putting an arm around her shoulders. "Your art is amazing, Mel. Who cares about stupid math?" She looked up, eyes red. "You don't have to pretend. You're the golden child. You always will be." That moment could have been a turning point, a chance for us to unite against the unfair expectations. Instead, it deepened the divide. Melissa began to see me as the embodiment of everything she couldn't achieve, and I began walking on eggshells around her volatile emotions. Through high school, I developed a pattern of bailing Melissa out of difficult situations. When she forgot to complete a major history project, I stayed up all night helping her finish it. When she crashed Mom's car after taking it without permission, I claimed I had been driving. Each time, her thanks were brief and tinged with resentment, as if my help only proved her inadequacy. College sent us in different directions. I attended Virginia Tech for engineering, steady and practical. Melissa went to art school in New York, then dropped out after 2 years to pursue acting in Los Angeles, then abandoned that to start a fashion blog, which gave way to a series of entrepreneurial ventures that never quite materialized. Through our 20s, our interactions became limited to holiday gatherings and occasional family emergencies. I settled into a career as a project manager for a construction firm, bought a modest house, and started dating Rachel, a kindergarten teacher with a level-headed patience I admired. Melissa's life continued on its chaotic trajectory. She'd call me with excitement about her latest passion project, only to never mention it again when the next inspiration struck. She cycled through relationships with the same impulsive enthusiasm, each new boyfriend, the one, until he inevitably wasn't. When Melissa was 25, she had a breakdown after another failed relationship. During her recovery, she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which explained the emotional intensity, impulsivity, and fear of abandonment that had characterized her behavior for years. The diagnosis should have fostered understanding between us, but instead, it became another point of comparison, my mental stability versus her struggles. Despite everything, we maintained a grudging respect for each other. I admired her creativity and courage to pursue her dreams, however fleeting. And I think she respected my reliability, even as she mocked my boring life choices. At least someone in this family has their act together, our mother would say at Thanksgiving dinner, patting my hand while looking pointedly at Melissa. I'd see my sister's smile tighten, her knuckles widening around her fork, and I'd quickly change the subject. By the time Melissa became engaged to Trevor Reynolds, a charismatic marketing executive she'd been dating for a surprisingly stable year and a half, we had established an unspoken truce. We'd text occasionally, share obligatory birthday wishes, and maintain the appearance of a normal sibling relationship without delving into the complicated emotions beneath the surface. I never could have predicted that her 30th birthday would shatter our fragile peace and force us to confront the decades of competition, resentment, and unmet needs that defined our relationship. The call came on a Tuesday evening as I was preparing dinner with Rachel. Melissa's name flashed on my phone screen, unusual enough that I felt a twist of concern. "It's my sister," I said to Rachel, who nodded knowingly. She'd witnessed enough of our complicated interactions to understand this wasn't just a casual check-in. "Ethan, everything is ruined," Melissa sobbed the moment I answered. "The biggest day of my life is going to be a complete disaster." After several minutes of crying, I pieced together what had happened. Melissa had been planning her 30th birthday celebration for months, not just a party but a full weekend experience at Blue Ridge Mountain Resort. With her recent engagement to Trevor, the event had taken on additional significance, becoming a pre-wedding celebration with their closest friends and family. Amanda disappeared. She finally managed to explain. Amanda Lewis was the event planner Melissa had hired, paying a substantial deposit to coordinate everything from accommodations to catering to entertainment. "What do you mean disappeared?" I asked. "Gone. Vanished. Her phone is disconnected, her office is empty, and she has 3 weeks of my messages unanswered." Melissa's voice rose hysterically. "The resort says they never received our deposit, nothing is booked, and the party is in 10 days. I pinched the bridge of my nose, already foreseeing where this conversation was heading. "Have you filed a police report for fraud?" "Of course I have. But that doesn't solve my problem. 30 people are expecting an amazing weekend that now doesn't exist." The implication hung unspoken between us. She needed my help. Practical, reliable Ethan to the rescue again. "Mel, I'm sorry this happened, but I don't know what you expect me to do on such short notice. You know everyone in this town. You have connections. You're so organized and responsible." She said the last word like it was both an insult and her salvation. After we hung up, I stared at the half-chopped vegetables on the cutting board. Rachel wrapped her arms around me from behind. "Let me guess, birthday drama?" I explained the situation while we finished cooking, torn between sympathy for Melissa's predicament and frustration at being her default fixer. "You don't have to do it, you know," Rachel said as we sat down to eat. "You're not responsible for her problems." "I know," I sighed. "But if I don't help, she'll melt down completely. And then my parents will be calling, wondering why I couldn't spare a little effort to help my sister." Rachel studied me for a moment. "That's not the only reason though, is it?" She was right. Beneath the obligation and the expectation, there was something else, a genuine desire to see Melissa happy, to protect her from disappointment, despite everything. The next morning, I started making calls. Through my work in construction project management, I had connections with event venues, caterers, and vendors across the region. By noon, I'd secured an alternate venue at Riverstone Manor, an elegant historic estate that had a last-minute cancellation. For the next week, I juggled my regular job with frantic party planning. I negotiated with caterers, found a DJ, arranged for decorations based on photos from Melissa's Pinterest board. Each evening, I'd update her on the progress, met with minimal gratitude and maximum critique. I wanted the napkins to be blush, not pink, she complained during one call. Blush is significantly more expensive on rush order, I explained, trying to keep the frustration from my voice. It's my special day, Ethan. I guess you wouldn't understand since you've never had a real celebration. The barb was typical Melissa, referencing my preference for low-key birthdays over elaborate parties. The financial strain was substantial. When the fraudulent event planner had disappeared with Melissa's deposit, it left a gaping hole in the budget. Melissa and Trevor contributed what they could, but it wasn't enough. I ended up putting several $1,000s on my credit card, telling myself it was worth it to maintain family peace. Rachel watched with growing concern as I stayed up late reviewing contracts and confirming details. You're putting yourself through all this, and she doesn't even seem grateful, she observed one night as I checked off items on my ever-growing to-do list. She'll appreciate it when she sees how it all comes together, I said, not entirely believing it myself. The truth was, I had fallen into a familiar pattern, trying to earn approval through sacrifice. If the party was perfect, maybe Melissa would finally acknowledge my worth. Maybe our parents would see us as equally valuable, in our different ways. 2 days before the event, I did a final walkthrough of Riverstone Manor with the coordinator. The grand ballroom overlooked manicured gardens that would be lit with string lights for the evening portion of the celebration. The caterer had prepared a tasting menu that impressed even my skeptical palate. The DJ had confirmed Melissa's must-play list. Against all odds, the hastily replanned 30th birthday weekend was shaping up to be spectacular. I sent Melissa photos from the venue, and for the first time since the crisis began, her response contained genuine excitement. "This actually looks amazing," her text read. "Better than what I had originally planned. Thank you, E." That simple acknowledgement felt like a rare victory in our complicated relationship. As I drove home from the venue, I allowed myself to hope that this weekend might actually heal some of the old wounds between us. I should have known better. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather, clear skies and mild temperatures ideal for the outdoor welcome reception planned for the afternoon. I arrived at Riverstone Manor at 8, wanting to oversee the final preparations before guests began arriving at noon. The venue looked even better than during the walkthrough. Florists arranged centerpieces of garden roses and eucalyptus on tables draped with ivory linens. Bartenders stocked the custom cocktail station that would feature Melissa's favorite drink, renamed the Birthday Girl, for the occasion. A photographer circulated, capturing the pristine setup before it would be filled with celebrating guests. Melissa and Trevor arrived around 10, earlier than expected. When she stepped into the ballroom, her eyes widened, taking in the transformation. "Ethan," she breathed, spinning slowly to absorb the details. It's perfect." For a moment, the years of competition fell away, and she was simply my little sister, genuinely touched by something I'd done for her. She hugged me tightly, her usual guardedness temporarily lowered. "Thank you for saving my birthday," she whispered. Trevor shook my hand warmly. "Seriously, man. You pulled off a miracle here." The moment of harmony was short-lived. As guests began to arrive and Melissa shifted into hostess mode, her demeanor subtly changed. She began introducing me as my brother who helped with some of the logistics, rather than acknowledging the full extent of my involvement. Our parents arrived looking impressed, Mom immediately taking photos of every detail while Dad commented on the extravagance, with a mixture of disapproval and pride. "This must have cost a fortune," he muttered to me at the bar. "I hope Melissa appreciates what you've done." "It's her big day," I replied neutrally, not wanting to start any drama. The afternoon flowed into evening, the welcome reception transitioning to dinner, and then dancing. On the surface, the party was a spectacular success. Guests raved about the food, the music, the picturesque setting. Melissa looked radiant in her gold sequined dress, graciously accepting birthday wishes and engagement congratulations. But I noticed a shift in her mood after Trevor's dinner toast. He'd raised his glass and said, "To my beautiful fiancée on her 30th birthday. And a special thanks to her brother Ethan, who literally saved this entire weekend when disaster struck. We wouldn't be here celebrating without his incredible effort. The room erupted in applause, many guests turning to smile appreciatively in my direction. I nodded modestly, uncomfortable with the attention but pleased by the acknowledgement. Melissa's smile remained fixed, but something hardened in her eyes. She clinked her glass against Trevor's with slightly more force than necessary, then drained her champagne in one long swallow. As the night progressed, she drank steadily, her laughter growing louder, her gestures more expansive. I kept a concerned eye on her while trying to stay in the background, not wanting to do anything that might further agitate her. Around 10, I was chatting with Rachel near the dessert table when I overheard Melissa talking to her best friend Jasmine in what she probably thought was a hushed voice. "It's so typical," she was saying, words slightly slurred. "It's supposed to be my special day, but somehow Ethan still manages to make it about him. I don't think that's fair," Jasmine replied. "He really came through when you needed help." "Please," Melissa scoffed. "He loves playing the hero. Makes him look so good while I'm the mess who can't even plan her own party." I pretended not to hear, turning to engage Rachel in conversation about the cake, which was due to be presented at 11. But the familiar hurt settled in my chest, the recognition that no matter what I did, Melissa would find a way to resent it. The cake moment, which should have been the joyful culmination of the evening, felt strained. A magnificent three-tiered creation was wheeled out, sparklers blazing on top. Everyone gathered to sing, "Happy Birthday," but Melissa's smile didn't reach her eyes as she bent to blow out the candles. I wondered what she wished for in that moment. Freedom from comparison? A life where her accomplishments were enough? Or something simpler, like getting through the rest of the night without the facade cracking? Whatever it was, her wish was about to go dramatically unfulfilled. By midnight, most of the guests had departed, leaving only family and a few close friends. The serving staff was clearing the last of the dessert plates while the DJ packed up his equipment. Melissa had disappeared about 20 minutes earlier, presumably to freshen up. Rachel was helping my mother collect gift bags when Trevor approached me, looking concerned. "Have you seen Melissa? She seemed upset when she left." "I thought she went to the restroom," I replied. "Want me to check on her?" Trevor nodded gratefully. "Would you? She's been acting strange since dinner." I made my way to the venue's bridal suite, which Melissa had been using as a preparation room throughout the day. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear movement inside. "Mel? You okay in there?" I knocked lightly. "Come in, Ethan." Her voice sounded eerily calm. I pushed the door open to find Melissa sitting at the vanity, staring at her reflection. Her mascara had smudged slightly, giving her a feverish appearance. A curling iron was heating on the counter beside her. "Trevor was wondering where you went," I said carefully, sensing the tension in the room. She turned to face me, her expression unnervingly blank. "Everyone loved the party, didn't they?" "Yeah, it was a huge success. You should be really happy with how it turned out." "Happy?" she repeated, as if testing the word. "Why would I be happy about being humiliated at my own birthday party?" I blinked in confusion. "Humiliated? Mel, everyone had an amazing time. They were all there to celebrate you." "No," she stood abruptly. "They were there to witness Saint Ethan save the day again. Poor Melissa can't even handle her own birthday without Big Brother stepping in." The familiar pattern was unfolding, but something about her tone felt different, more dangerous than our usual arguments. "That's not what happened," I said quietly. "You asked for my help, and I gave it. No one thinks less of you for that." "Don't lie to me," she snapped, voice rising. "I saw how they all looked at you during Trevor's toast. Even he thinks you're so wonderful, so dependable compared to his unstable fiancée. Trevor loves you," I insisted. "He was just being grateful for the help. You love this, don't you?" She took a step toward me. "You've always loved making me look incompetent. The responsible one, the successful one, while I'm just the family screw-up. Melissa, you're being irrational. I think you've had too much to drink. There it is. She laughed bitterly. Irrational Melissa, emotional Melissa, can't possibly have valid feelings because she has a diagnosis. I heard footsteps in the hallway and felt a surge of relief. Let's talk about this tomorrow when you're feeling more yourself. I am myself, she shouted. This is who I am, Ethan. The sister you've spent your entire life trying to overshadow. The door opened behind me, and I half turned to see Trevor and our father entering, both looking alarmed by the raised voices. What's going on? Dad asked, looking between us. Just a little sibling disagreement, I said lightly, trying to defuse the situation. Melissa's laugh was harsh. Always minimizing my feelings. Always making me seem crazy. No one thinks you're crazy, honey, Trevor said soothingly, moving toward her. What happened next occurred so quickly I barely had time to react. Melissa lunged toward the vanity, grabbed the hot curling iron, and whirled toward me with a wild expression. Let's see how perfect you look with my name on your face, she screamed, thrusting the heated metal toward my cheek. I jerked backward, but not quite fast enough. The curling iron grazed the side of my face, sending a searing pain across my skin. I stumbled against the wall as Trevor shouted and grabbed Melissa's arm, forcing her to drop the styling tool. What the hell are you doing? Dad roared, rushing to restrain Melissa as she struggled against Trevor's grip. Get off me, she shrieked, trying to break free. He deserves it. He's always trying to show me up, always making me look bad. My hand went to my cheek, feeling the raised welt forming where the hot metal had made contact. The pain was intense, but the shock of what had just happened overwhelmed the physical sensation. My sister had just tried to permanently disfigure me. Marcus, my friend who had stayed to help with cleanup, appeared in the doorway, taking in the chaotic scene. I called 911. He said, his voice steady despite the shock evident on his face. They're on their way. Melissa's rage transformed into panic as the reality of what she'd done began to sink in. No, you can't call the police, she pleaded, suddenly looking small and frightened. I didn't mean it, I wasn't thinking clearly. But it was too late. Within minutes, the elegant historic mansion was bathed in the rotating red and blue lights of police cars. Paramedics examined my face, confirming that the burn was superficial and wouldn't leave a permanent scar if properly treated. As the police officers interviewed witnesses and took statements, my mother sobbed quietly in a corner, while my father looked shell-shocked. Rachel held ice against my face, her expression a mixture of horror and concern. Are you pressing charges, sir? An officer asked me. I stared through the doorway where I could see Melissa sitting handcuffed in the back of a police car, mascara streaked down her face. Despite everything, my instinct was still to protect her. But as Rachel gently turned my face toward her, I saw the fear in her eyes. This isn't normal sibling rivalry, Ethan, she whispered. She could have blinded you. In that moment, I realized that my pattern of excusing Melissa's behavior wasn't helping either of us. It was enabling a destructive cycle that had now escalated to violence. Yes, I told the officer, my voice hollow. I'm pressing charges. As they drove away with my sister in the back seat, I felt a strange emptiness. The beautiful party I had worked so hard to create had ended in chaos and criminal charges. The troubled relationship I'd spent a lifetime navigating had finally broken beyond what I could fix with careful planning and patient tolerance. What I didn't know then was that this terrible night would ultimately force both of us to confront the truth about ourselves and each other in ways that would transform our relationship forever. The weeks following Melissa's arrest were a blur of family crisis. Our parents, predictably, went into damage control mode, hiring an expensive attorney and pressuring me to drop the charges. She made one mistake, Ethan. My father argued during a tense dinner at their house 3 days after the incident. She's your sister, for God's sake. One mistake? I gestured to my face, where the burn was healing but still visible. She tried to permanently disfigure me, Dad. That's not a mistake, that's assault. She needs help, not jail. My mother pleaded, eyes red from constant crying. Think what this will do to her future, her reputation. The guilt trips were relentless, made worse by the fact that part of me agreed with them. I didn't want Melissa in jail. But I also couldn't pretend this was just another emotional outburst to be smoothed over and forgotten. Rachel became my anchor during this time. She moved temporarily into my house, concerned about leaving me alone with my conflicted thoughts. "You need to consider what's best for both of you in the long run," she said one evening as we sat on my back porch. "Sometimes true compassion means holding someone accountable." Trevor called me a week after the incident, sounding exhausted. He and Melissa had been fighting since her release on bail, her anger now directed at him for not defending her more vigorously. "I love her, man," he said, "but I don't know if I can marry someone who would do something like this. She refuses to admit she has a problem." The district attorney charged Melissa with second-degree assault, which carried potential prison time. After seeing the charge, she finally agreed to undergo a psychiatric evaluation, perhaps realizing the seriousness of her situation. The evaluation revealed what I had suspected: Melissa's mental health had deteriorated significantly. She had stopped taking medication prescribed for her borderline personality disorder months earlier, convinced she could manage without it. The stress of the birthday planning, combined with alcohol and her underlying condition, had created a perfect storm of impulsivity and rage. A month after the birthday disaster, we gathered in a wood-paneled courtroom for Melissa's hearing. She looked small and pale in a conservative navy dress, nothing like the vibrant, gold-sequined birthday girl. Our parents sat rigidly in the front row, while Rachel squeezed my hand supportively as we took seats behind them. Trevor sat alone on the opposite side, his expression unreadable. When Melissa's case was called, her attorney presented the psychiatric evaluation and proposed an alternative to incarceration: an intensive treatment program combined with community service and strict monitoring. The prosecutor argued that the premeditated nature of the attack warranted more severe consequences. The defendant picked up a heated implement with the stated intention of branding the victim's face, she emphasized. This was not a momentary lapse but a deliberate attempt to cause permanent disfigurement. Judge Patricia Harmon, a stern-faced woman with silver hair pulled into a tight bun, asked if I wished to make a statement. Standing at the podium, I looked at Melissa directly for the first time since the attack. Her eyes were downcast, shoulders hunched in a posture of defeat that seemed utterly foreign to my normally confident sister. "Your Honor," I began, "what my sister did was inexcusable and traumatic. But I don't believe prison will address the underlying issues that led to this incident. Melissa needs mental health treatment and accountability, not incarceration." Judge Harmon studied me thoughtfully. "You're showing remarkable compassion towards someone who attempted to cause you serious harm, Mr. Wilson. What do you believe would be an appropriate consequence?" I took a deep breath. "I believe Melissa needs structure, supervision, and intensive therapy. She needs to take responsibility for her actions while getting the help she clearly needs." After hearing all arguments, Judge Harmon delivered her decision with measured deliberation. "Ms. Wilson, your actions were extremely serious and could have resulted in permanent injury to your brother. However, I am persuaded that your mental health played a significant role in this incident." She leaned forward, fixing Melissa with an unwavering gaze. "I am sentencing you to 3 years probation, during which time you will complete an intensive outpatient therapy program. You will perform 200 hours of community service at the burn unit of Mercy Hospital, where you will witness firsthand the devastating impact of burn injuries." Then came the unexpected twist. "Additionally, for the first 6 months of your probation, you will reside with a court-approved guardian who will monitor your medication compliance and overall stability." Judge Harmon looked directly at me. "Mr. Wilson, given your expressed concern for your sister's well-being and your understanding of her condition, would you be willing to serve as this guardian?" The courtroom fell silent. I felt Rachel stiffen beside me, while my parents exchanged shocked glances. Melissa's head snapped up, her expression a mixture of disbelief and something unreadable. "Your Honor," I stammered, "I'm not sure that would be appropriate, given the circumstances." "On the contrary," Judge Harmon replied. Family support is crucial in mental health recovery, and you've demonstrated both compassion and appropriate boundaries. However, I won't force this arrangement if you're unwilling. I looked at Melissa again, seeing not the angry woman who had attacked me, but the vulnerable sister I'd protected since childhood. Despite everything, I couldn't abandon her when she was at her lowest point. I'm willing, Your Honor, I said quietly, already questioning my decision. Very well. Judge Harmon made notes on her paperwork. The court will appoint a probation officer who will make regular, unannounced visits to ensure compliance. Ms. Wilson, do you understand and accept these terms? Melissa nodded numbly. Yes, Your Honor. Rachel was silent as we left the courthouse, her disapproval evident in the tight set of her shoulders. My parents seemed relieved but confused by the unexpected arrangement. Are you sure about this, Ethan? My father asked as we stood in the parking lot. It's a lot to take on. I'm not sure of anything right now, I admitted. But it seems like the right thing to do. As Melissa was led away to complete paperwork with her probation officer, I wondered if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. Rachel finally spoke when we were alone in my car. I understand why you did it, she said carefully. But I'm worried about what this will do to you. To us. It's only 6 months, I replied, not entirely convinced myself. And maybe this is what we both need to finally break this destructive pattern between us. Little did I know how prophetic those words would prove to be, or how deeply challenging and ultimately transformative the next 6 months would become. The day Melissa moved into my spare bedroom was possibly the most awkward experience of my life. She arrived with 2 suitcases and a box of personal items, Trevor noticeably absent from the drop-off. Our parents hovered anxiously, offering unsolicited advice until I politely but firmly asked them to leave us to figure things out. After they departed, Melissa and I stood in my living room, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. I've printed out some house rules, I finally said, handing her a sheet of paper. Nothing unreasonable, just basic expectations. She scanned the page. Medication compliance, therapy attendance, shared chore responsibilities, advance notice for visitors, respect for privacy and personal space. So I'm basically a teenager on restriction, she commented, but without her usual bite. You're an adult who made choices that led to legal consequences, I corrected gently. These guidelines are to help us both survive the next 6 months. She nodded slowly. I guess that's fair. That first week felt like navigating a minefield. We circled each other cautiously, overly polite in a way that highlighted the trauma between us. Melissa spent most of her time in her room, emerging only for meals or when necessary. I worked longer hours at the office, unsure how to occupy the same space as the sister who had tried to harm me. Rachel was supportive but wary, declining dinner invitations when Melissa would be present. I need time to process all this, she explained. Watching you play caretaker to someone who attacked you is difficult. The first real challenge came when I needed to take Melissa to her initial therapy appointment with Dr. Benjamin Frost, a specialist in personality disorders. She emerged from her room looking defensive, her body language screaming reluctance. I don't need a babysitter, she muttered as we got into my car. Judge's orders, I reminded her. And considering the alternative was jail, I'd think you'd be a little more grateful. The drive proceeded in stony silence until we reached the medical building. As Melissa reached for the door handle, I impulsively engaged the child safety lock. What the hell? She demanded. Look, I said, turning to face her. This isn't easy for either of us. But for the next 6 months, we're stuck together. We can make it miserable, or we can try to use this time to actually fix what's broken between us. Her eyes welled unexpectedly. What if it can't be fixed? What if I'm just permanently broken? The vulnerability in her question caught me off guard. Nobody's permanently broken, Mel. Not even you. Dr. Frost had suggested I join the last 15 minutes of each session, creating a bridge between therapy and home life. That first day, I sat awkwardly on the edge of a leather armchair while he summarized what they'd discussed. Melissa has agreed to explore the patterns in your relationship history, he explained. Particularly how childhood competition has shaped your adult interactions. It wasn't just childhood, Melissa interjected. It's still happening. Even now, he's the responsible guardian while I'm the crazy patient. Dr. Frost nodded thoughtfully. That perception of imbalance is exactly what we need to address. Ethan, how do you see your role in this dynamic? The question startled me. I'd been so focused on Melissa's behavior that I hadn't considered my own contributions to our dysfunction. I guess I've always tried to be the fixer, I admitted. The reliable one who steps in when things go wrong. And how might that reinforce Melissa's self-perception? The insight hit me with unexpected force. By constantly rescuing Melissa, I was inadvertently confirming her belief that she was incapable, that she needed saving. My helping wasn't always helpful. These therapy sessions became the framework for gradual change. 3 times weekly, Melissa and Dr. Frost would work through her issues, and I would join for brief periods of shared dialogue. Slowly, we began to understand the toxic patterns we both perpetuated. At home, small shifts occurred. Melissa began cooking dinner occasionally, simple meals that represented effort and consideration. I stopped checking whether she'd taken her medication, trusting her to manage this responsibility herself. We established a movie night routine, neutral territory where we could coexist without confronting our issues directly. About 6 weeks into the arrangement, Melissa's probation officer made an unannounced evening visit, catching us in the middle of an unexpectedly normal moment. We were playing Scrabble at the kitchen table, actually laughing over Melissa's creative but dubious word choice. You two seem to be adjusting well, the officer commented, somewhat surprised after reviewing her notes. After she left, Melissa looked at me curiously. Are we? Adjusting well? I considered the question. Better than I expected, honestly. Do you still hate me? She asked abruptly. For what I did to you. I touched my cheek, where the burn had healed completely. I never hated you, Mel. I was hurt, shocked, scared, but not hateful. I would hate me, she said quietly. I don't even remember deciding to do it. One minute I was just so angry, feeling so humiliated, and the next. She shuddered. Sometimes I don't recognize the person I'd become when I'm like that. That's why the medication and therapy are so important, I said. That person isn't really you. She shook her head slowly. But it is me, Ethan. That's what I'm learning in therapy. It's a part of me I need to recognize and manage, not disown. It was the most insightful thing I'd ever heard her say about her condition, and it marked a turning point in our forced cohabitation. The real breakthrough came during a family therapy session 2 months into the arrangement. Our parents joined us at Dr. Frost's office, visibly uncomfortable with the clinical setting. Today we're going to discuss family dynamics and how they've contributed to Ethan and Melissa's relationship patterns, Dr. Frost began. Dad immediately became defensive. We gave our children every advantage. We encouraged them to excel. By constantly comparing them to each other? Dr. Frost asked mildly. Mom looked stricken. We never meant to create competition between them. We just wanted them both to reach their potential. What I heard, Melissa said carefully, was that Ethan's strengths were valuable, and mine were not. That's ridiculous, Dad protested. We were always proud of your creativity. Were you? I interjected, surprising myself. Because I remember you calling her art a nice hobby while you bragged to everyone about my math scores. The conversation that followed was painful but necessary, exposing the ways our parents had inadvertently created a hierarchy of achievement that placed us in constant opposition. For perhaps the first time, Melissa and I found ourselves allied, presenting a united perspective on our shared experience. As we left the session, Melissa touched my arm lightly. Thanks for backing me up in there. It was the truth. I shrugged. Maybe if we'd been able to talk like this years ago, things would be different. Maybe it's not too late, she suggested hesitantly. That evening, over takeout from our favorite Chinese restaurant, Melissa finally addressed the birthday party incident directly. "I need to apologize properly," she said, setting down her chopsticks. "Not because the court ordered it, or because we're stuck living together, but because I truly am sorry, Ethan." She met my eyes steadily. "What I did was inexcusable. There's no justification for trying to hurt you, especially after you worked so hard to save my party. I was so caught up in my own insecurities that I couldn't see your help for what it was, an act of love." The simple sincerity of her words broke something open between us. For the first time since we were small children, we talked openly about our feelings, our resentments, and our hopes for a healthier relationship. "I've never really understood you," I admitted. "Your intensity, your creativity, the way you feel everything so deeply. It intimidated me, even while I was trying to protect you. And I've been jealous of your stability," she confessed. "Everything seems to come easily to you." I laughed. "Nothing comes easily. I just hide the struggle better." As the months passed, our enforced proximity evolved from awkward obligation to genuine reconnection. Rachel gradually warmed to the new dynamic, even joining us for dinner occasionally. Trevor, after initially keeping his distance, began visiting Melissa regularly, their relationship tentatively rebuilding. One evening in the 5th month of our arrangement, I came home to find Melissa had prepared an elaborate dinner, complete with candles and wine glasses filled with sparkling cider, alcohol being prohibited by her probation terms. "What's the occasion?" I asked, surveying the unexpected effort. "6 months ago today was my birthday party," she said simply. "I wanted to replace that memory with something better." As we ate, she handed me a small wrapped package. Inside was a framed photo of us as children, building that sandcastle I'd remembered from our early years. "Dr. Frost suggested we need to reconnect with the relationship we had before competition took over," she explained. "I found this in Mom's old albums." The image captured a moment of pure collaboration. Me carefully structuring the walls while Melissa added creative flourishes, either of us trying to outdo the other, just building something beautiful together. It felt like a perfect metaphor for what we were slowly, painstakingly beginning to reconstruct between us. The 6-month mark arrived with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. We'd developed a functional routine in my house, a delicate balance that worked surprisingly well. The prospect of disrupting this new equilibrium by ending the court-ordered arrangement felt almost concerning. The final court hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Melissa dressed carefully in a professional navy pantsuit, a stark contrast to the defeated woman who had stood before Judge Harmon half a year earlier. "Nervous?" I asked as we drove to the courthouse. "A little," she admitted. "What if the judge doesn't think I've made enough progress? Dr. Frost's report is excellent. Your probation officer has nothing but positive comments. You've completed more than the required community service hours at the burn unit. You've done everything asked of you, Mel." She smiled at the nickname, which had gradually returned to my vocabulary as our relationship healed. "Thanks to you?" "No." I shook my head firmly. "Thanks to you? All I did was provide space. You did the actual work." Judge Harmon reviewed the documentation carefully, her expression giving away nothing. Dr. Frost testified about Melissa's consistent participation and progress in therapy. The probation officer confirmed perfect compliance with all court requirements. Finally, the judge addressed Melissa directly. "Ms. Wilson, when I ordered this arrangement 6 months ago, I had significant concerns about your stability and your ability to take responsibility for your actions. The reports before me today show remarkable progress in both areas." Melissa stood straighter, her confidence visible but not arrogant. "Thank you, Your Honor. I am therefore terminating the guardianship requirement of your probation, effective immediately. You are free to choose your own living arrangements, though you will continue with therapy and regular probation check-ins for the remainder of your 3-year term." Relief washed over Melissa's face, but there was something else there too, a flicker of what almost looked like regret. "Mr. Wilson," Judge Harmon turned to me, "the court thanks you for your service in this unusual arrangement. It's clear from these reports that your support has been instrumental in your sister's progress. Outside the courthouse, our parents waited anxiously. When we shared the news, Mom immediately began making plans. You can move back home until you find a new apartment, Melissa. Your old room is just as you left it. Melissa exchanged a glance with me before responding. Actually, Mom, Ethan and I have been talking. If he's okay with it, I'd like to stay at his place a little longer, just until I get my own apartment lined up. The stability has been really good for me. My parents looked shocked, but I nodded confirmation. We've worked out a system. No reason to disrupt it unnecessarily. The truth was more complex than we explained. Over late-night conversations during the previous weeks, we'd acknowledged that our enforced cohabitation had created something valuable, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than competition, honesty rather than resentment. Melissa did eventually find her own apartment, about 2 months after the court order ended. By then, her relationship with Trevor had strengthened enough that they were cautiously discussing wedding plans again, with a new emphasis on building a solid foundation before rushing into marriage. Rachel and I had weathered the strain on our relationship, emerging stronger for having navigated such a complex situation together. Her initial wariness of Melissa transformed into genuine friendship as she witnessed the authentic changes in my sister. More surprising was the shift in my relationship with my parents. The family therapy sessions had opened conversations that continued long after the formal requirement ended, leading to new awareness on all sides. They began making conscious efforts to appreciate each of us for our unique qualities, without harmful comparisons. On Melissa's 31st birthday, exactly 1 year after the curling iron incident, we gathered for a simple dinner at my house. No elaborate venue, no crisis management, just family and a few close friends sharing good food and genuine conversation. As Melissa blew out the candles on a cake Rachel had baked, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year. From the chaos and pain of that night to the healing and growth that followed, we had traversed emotional territory I never thought possible. Later, as the evening wound down, Melissa found me alone on the back porch, gazing at the stars. "Penny, for your thoughts?" she asked, joining me on the steps. "Just thinking about how different things are from a year ago." She winced slightly. "Not my finest moment." "No," I agreed. "But maybe a necessary one." Would we have ever addressed all that history if something dramatic hadn't forced us to? Probably not, she conceded. We were pretty good at pretending everything was fine while silently resenting each other. And now? She considered the question thoughtfully. Now I think I actually know you, instead of the version of you I created in my head. The perfect brother I could never measure up to. And I know you, I replied. Not as someone to fix or protect, but as a whole person. Complicated, creative, challenging sometimes, but whole. I still have bad days, she admitted. Days when the old thoughts creep in, when I feel inadequate or angry or lost. But I have better tools now. We both do. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment before she spoke again. Thank you, Ethan. Not just for helping with the birthday party or agreeing to the guardianship, but for believing I could be better even when I was at my worst. That's what family is supposed to do, I said simply. See the best in each other, even when it's hidden. The journey from that disastrous birthday to this peaceful evening had taught me something profound. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones who need our compassion most, but only when they're genuinely ready to change. And sometimes the hardest person to set boundaries with is the one you've spent a lifetime trying to protect. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing harm. It means creating space for something new to grow in place of bitterness. Melissa and I had both learned this lesson the hard way, but perhaps those are the lessons that truly transform us. As the stars brightened overhead, I thought about how often family relationships become defined by unspoken patterns, fixed roles that trap us in versions of ourselves that no longer fit. Breaking those patterns is painful, sometimes even traumatic, but the freedom on the other side is worth the difficult passage. If you've ever struggled with a toxic family dynamic, or loved someone through their darkest moments, I hope our story offers some hope. Healing is possible, even after the deepest wounds. Have you ever had to be a caretaker for someone who hurt you? How did you balance compassion with healthy boundaries? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about family healing and personal transformation. Sometimes our hardest challenges lead to our greatest growth, and I'm grateful to be able to share this journey with all of you.